We've done grand season previews all week. We're doing Tennessee's tonight. The mood to start with. We always love to do the mood tracker. The mood tracker is very complicated for Tennessee. It's 4 words. It is mouth shut, toes tapping. And that is, in a sense, is how you sit in a chair when you've had patience for about as long as you can stand to have patience, and you kind of get it, and therefore you've shown that you get it, and now you want it. You want them to give it back to you. Tennessee fans have had patience for, what, a decade plus now? They have not been necessarily unruly or boisterous to the point where they've just been kind of rabid and they've been blinded to reality. They've had patience, but they keep getting asked to have patience, and now they want results. And I think that's more than fair because they have invested emotionally. They've invested every way you can invest. So they want returns, and this is where they want those returns to start coming in. Areas of focus for Tennessee this year. Key elements, potentially key elements, that are being overlooked here, ironically enough, because they're being talked about by everyone. Think about what everyone's saying right now in an abnormal year. Well, the teams that have continuity at head coach and your coordinators and quarterback, teams that have those elements returning year to year, well, they're going to be a lot further along than teams that don't have all those elements in place. Tennessee's got those elements in place. Combine that with the fact that they got a pretty good stable of running backs. They got an excellent offensive line. It's just that no one looks at Jarrett Garantano and has fear struck in their heart. And so I think a lot of people look at Tennessee and they say, well, they're the exception. Even though they have all those elements coming back, we're not scared of Jim Chaney. We're not scared of any of the quarterbacks they have. Maybe the Bailey kid's going to be good, but not this year, certainly. But I'll tell you what it does allow them to do. The style they want to play, which is essentially to be the biggest wrecking ball in college football, that is their offensive style this year, or I think will be. It allows them, even with all the disruptions with COVID, to have a pretty good head start towards achieving that. Which brings me to my second point of focus, and that is just that. What will the impact be of all the COVID-related disruption that they've had? They've had a lot of it. There's never a way to know how many reps this guy got and how much time on the shelf that guy spent. We don't know that, and to be honest with you, even if we did, it would probably be paralysis by analysis. You wouldn't really know what to make of it. But I'd love to see if I could just see Tennessee's all 22 or maybe starting 2 deep, and I could see a meter next to every guy. How many of those guys have gotten 80+% of the repetition and preparation physically and mentally that they need? I don't think a bunch of them are at 100%, to be honest with you. I don't think it's even realistic. Sometimes when you've had a full camp, it's not realistic. But if they got a critical mass of guys that are 75, 80% there, I'd feel good enough with Tennessee. No way to know. The huge potential impact, as we've said before and we said in the preview video for the opener against South Carolina, is special teams. I think that's where that could potentially bite you in a big way. Third area of focus, Ty Chandler and Eric Gray. And some of you think maybe not in that order, but in whatever order you think it'll be, those are the 2 running backs for Tennessee that they are going to lean on, and I mean lean on heavily. Both have to play at their maximum potential this year. They have to avoid injury. They have to stay healthy. It's an ultra tough task because what they're going to be asked to do is different maybe than what some teams' running backs will be asked to do. They are going to have to gain tough yards. They're going to have to be ultra physical. They are going to deal and take poundings week to week. Ball security at a premium. This is a low variance. This is a low margin for error team this year. They got to be able to fall forward. They got to be able to gain tough yards. One of these guys could have a 96-yard day on 23 carries and have done everything necessary. That's not necessarily the biggest yards per carry average, but those are the kind of games Tennessee is going to need. So biggest questions for the Vols here. The first one is, are we going to end up seeing what Jeremy Pruitt has really been disappointed in, vocally disappointed in, and that is a lackluster defensive front? I don't know what to make of it, to be honest with you, because we haven't been able to see practice. But if you've paid attention to Tennessee, Jeremy Pruitt has been none too pleased with the production, apparently, from his defensive front in practice. He's been very outspoken about them not meeting his standard. Now, what you don't know is, how good are they even if they don't meet his standard? Or is this sort of kind of a psychological approach that he's taking because he thinks that's the best way to light a fire under that unit? I don't know if it was message sending and you're going to watch him in week 1 and say, well, that criticism paid off. Or if you're going to watch him in week 1 and say, boy, he was right. That for whatever reason, they are not up to par. And that's going to be a problem for them all season long. Second biggest question, can the offense for Tennessee handle the challenge that's in front of them? Sounds like a very generic statement, but I am speaking very specifically about Tennessee. what they're going to be asked to do defensively, very few teams in America possess the capability of doing. Quite simply, Jeremy Pruitt, Jim Chaney, and that staff are going to ask this offense to be the most physical in the entire sport, in the league and in the sport. That has got to be their MO this year. They do not have the personnel to consistently spread you and cut you to death. What they do have the ability to do, potentially, with that offensive line, with a competent enough quarterback, and with big, physical, powerful backs, is bludgeon you. And that's what they want to do every week, maul you. And that stuff sounds good, but it's not Rambo. It's not a movie. This is real life. And you got to do that week to week. And as you exert a physical toll on the opposition, you got to take care of your body, and you got to take care of collectively yourself. That's a very hard style of football to play in a normal year. You're playing 10 conference games. Can you maintain that? If you can, I think Tennessee is very capable of exceeding most people's expectation for them. Third question. Jarrett Garantano's going to be the starting quarterback for this team. Is he going to finish as the starting quarterback? Is he going to be the starting quarterback midway through the year? Because I'll be honest with you, when we talk about the style that they're going to play, again, it's not one that's going to ask a quarterback to throw the ball 45 times in a game. What it is going to ask the quarterback to do is get you in the right pre-snap set. It's going to ask you to check properly. It's going to ask you to manage an offense, not turn the ball over. And it's going to ask you to make timely throws. Accuracy, pinpoint in nature, is going to be pivotal for him, pretty much any quarterback. But because that's a style that I think they feel maybe more than one of their quarterbacks can execute, you got Brian Maurer there. As I said, you got Harrison Bailey, the young true freshman who's probably the most talented out of the group waiting in the wings. I don't know how long the leash is, and I don't think anyone else up there really does. I will say, I think Jeremy Pruitt and Jim Chaney could be quicker to pull a trigger on a quarterback change than the average staff would. Number one, because they've already done it before. With this group, they've already done it. And number two, I don't think that the ask for the quarterback position this year is very typical to what you would normally expect in college football. I think it's going to be a very unique style that Tennessee plays offensively this year. All right, Colin, let's talk about schedule scenarios. We've got a strength of schedule that we do all our own in-house here. Instead of predicting all of your wins and losses and just putting it up on a board, which, Colin, we don't have, so we couldn't do it anyway, we like to attribute a toughness rating to every one of your games, 1 to 10, 10 being the toughest, and then we add it all up. We do some fancy math, calculator necessary, and we do a best, worst, most likely record scenario. At Georgia, week 3, obviously that's a 10-rated game. Bama comes in there 2 weeks later, that's a 10-rated game. You notice in between there, we've got Kentucky rated an 8. Kentucky starts the season at Auburn. We had that game rated a 7. So why would this be an 8? Well, because of who you're playing them immediately following and who you play them immediately before. That is probably the most fortuitous sandwich position the Cats could ever find themselves in. So that's a tough little stretch there. You get through all that, you got 3 road games and a 4-game stretch, the toughest obviously being at Auburn. Now, I told Colin to put a 9 next to the A&M game. That was a typo. It's actually an 8. It fits in the same category, but not quite a 9, welcoming the Aggies in at home. And Florida to end the season as a 9. Who knows what any team looks like by then. So they've got 2 games rated 10. They got 4 of them rated 8 or 9. Yes, that is 6 out of 10 games rated 8+. That is not an easy stretch. And for that reason, there's a fairly wide margin here between best case and worst case. The best case record for the Tennessee Volunteers this year, our model spat out 7-3. The worst case, the exact opposite. Just flip the 3 and the 7. Worst case is 3 and 7. That would involve a lot of injuries, as it is the case for most teams if you go worst case. But what is the most likely? Our model spat out 6-4 as the most likely record projection for Tennessee. I see no reason to deviate from that. That's essentially winning all of your games rated 7 or less and then stealing a couple of them rated 8 or higher. I think Tennessee's capable of that, and I think if they can maintain their health, a lot of these teams are going to be beat up down the stretch, and Tennessee's going to be the sledgehammer. Second sledgehammer reference on the show this week, by the way, not being used on me this time. Perfectly capable of exacting a toll on someone when they're in that state.